Honesty is not always the best policy, despite everything that we were taught in our youths, and unfortunately, sometimes it's still peddled in society at large today. What I'd like to do is provide for you some examples for us to explore, such as positive feedback from promotion board, medical diagnosis for sick patients, and even protecting secrets in the interest of national security. Do any of you have siblings? I'm an elder brother. And as a child, I regularly got into trouble for the mischief that my younger brother got into. Can any of you ever relate to having to lie to your parents to mitigate how much trouble you'd get into because there was no evidence to prove your innocence or your guilt? Lying, honesty is not always the best policy. For example, I recently sat on a mock promotion board. The member was ill prepared and they did not perform well. Lying provides us with the flexibility to give the member the tools that they're going to need to be successful, but allows us to blunt the feedback and criticism that we're going to provide so that they are successful. In my first visual today, I chose a physical representation of what our boards typically look like. But I also chose this because when I first began sitting on actual boards, in my feedback, I regularly would say, just look at it like it's a interview for a regular job. Then later on down the road, I realized that people are just as nervous in job interviews as they are in promotion boards. And so I stopped using that as an example. But our boards typically look like a three-member panel sitting behind a table with the interviewee on the opposite side. They answer our questions as well as provide us with a small blurb so that we have a more well-rounded picture of who we're dealing with and propping up to these positions of supervision and management. It was Professor Maurice Schweitzer from the University of Pennsylvania in an interview that he conducted with the Harvard Business Review, who was directly quoted as using this as an example. You've had a rocky start, but everyone struggles in the beginning. Before he segues into his constructive criticism, because ultimately we want our members to be successful and eventually become employees in a month, airmen in a quarter, airmen in a year, as opposed to them going postal and hunting us down because they feel like we weren't supportive enough in their endeavors. Honesty is not always the best policy. Years ago, my uncle was diagnosed with stage 4 non Hodgkin's lymphoma, a terminal diagnosis that, if my memory serves me correct, you're not expected to live longer than 6 months. Calm down, he's still alive today. But this wasn't before he underwent chemotherapy, as well as years of uncertainty, when he finally received confirmation from a second opinion that he'd been misdiagnosed. Medical professionals typically provide earnest opinions when diagnosing patients. But what's also common practice is to fluff up treatment plans in scenarios where these ailments and diseases are more severe and terminal. Now, they do this to foster hope, not only in the patient, but also in the patient support system, because the support system are the ones that are going to hold their hands and guide them as they fight to survive. In my second visual here today, we have Dr. Frosty. And Dr. Frosty is diagnosing this former snowman with dehydration. Now, I know because dehydration is so common nowadays, we don't view it this way anymore, but dehydration is still fatal and is still often cited in a lot of cases of deaths when patients expire in medical facilities as mitigating circumstances. So when Frosty is telling his former snowman, you're just dehydrated, that's tongue in cheek because there's no bringing that snowman back. Honesty is not always the best policy. I remember being told early in my career that under the threat of torture, everyone eventually breaks. The difference is how long it takes that person to break and how utterly broken they are after. Obfuscation for national security is integral and expected. As service members, we're told to provide very specific information should we ever be captured by the enemy or adversary. And this information can be found in the Code of Conduct, Article 5. We're instructed to tell our names, ranks, service numbers, and date of birth. Nothing more. Because anything else that you say, should you be lucky enough to escape captivity, could be used to prosecute you and incarcerate you once you get back home. So it's best to stick to those guidelines. In my final visual here today, you got Batman and Robin. And Batman is scolding Robin because upon returning to the Batcave, Robin had to log in online and check in that he was returning to the Batcave. And to make matters worse, his location services are active, so it's broadcasting the actual location of the Batcave for the world to see. Now, this one was near and dear to me because I had a former chief that no matter what TDY we went on, even when we deployed into the war zones, checked in everywhere we went. So we would cross our fingers because I went to the more austere locations forward deployed. We would cross our fingers that he never visited our sites. Providing enemies or adversaries with information that can be used to harm the U.S. or our interest is a no-go. So stick to what they told you. I chose to stay away from lying in interpersonal relationships and white lies because I've never in my life heard anyone say it's a good thing that my partner lied to me, ever. Perhaps you've experienced difference, but that's just been my experience. The negative aspersions cast on lying are drastic oversimplifications and tend to overshadow the benefits that they can provide sometimes. Lies have an integral part in society. Um, Honesty is the best policy, typically fades away when confronted with the grays of everyday life, because sometimes it is in the best interest to tell a lie over the truth. Thank you.